So I played the ARMS Global Testpunch this past weekend, and I wanted to give my thoughts and impressions that the game left me with before the weekend officially begins. I'm doing this because I'm unsure if I'll have a chance to play this weekend's Testpunch at any of the hours given, which is unfortunate for me due to what they just announced, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I'm just hoping I could come off sounding cohesive in my thoughts because I do have a nasty habit of rambling on, even with a general guideline to help me. I even wrote that down, see? Now before this Testpunch, I was skeptical of the game, but I was also interested in it as well, because it looked just like Punch-Out, but with an open arena and the game's namesake, extendable and customizable arms. While I was interested, I wasn't convinced of ever buying it until I got the chance to try it for myself. I feel like it's the kind of game you need to try before you know if it's something you like or not. And the most important thing that can make or break any game, especially a game like ARMS, is the controls. Now before anyone criticizes the forced motion controls, traditional control scheme is an option. But I experienced the Testpunch with both, so I'd like to discuss them both. I mean, the game is lenient enough to let you try the motion controls before you dive into the Testpunch, so even if it doesn't feel right to you at all, you could just switch to traditional controls. Nothing's really stopping you, since even the game acknowledges the other options before you even start. I tried the motion controls on Saturday, and they are as basic as motion controls can get. I mean, you could tilt the Joy-Cons in the same direction to move in that direction, you can press the L button to dash in the direction you're moving, or the R button to jump. You could also dash either on the ground or in the middle of a jump, so you get some mix-up options. You can throw a punch with either Joy-Con to throw a punch in-game, obviously, with that respective arm, and twisting your arm clockwise or counterclockwise will curve the punch. You could even throw out both arms at the same time to perform a grab. If you tilt the Joy-Cons inward toward each other, you can guard, and guarding for long enough will let you charge up both arms with their special attributes. But you could also get the same effect by either holding the L or R button on their own to charge that respective arm. And then you could use the ZL or ZR button to rush attack, which lets you unleash a flurry of quick attacks with both arms for a few seconds. If your opponent is quick to react though, they can evade the attacks, so you gotta use curve punches to try to catch them. On Sunday, I used traditional controls, and again, they are as basic as you can get them to be. Use the left stick to move, obviously, but clicking in the left stick lets you guard. You press the Y button to dash, the X button to jump, B for the left punch, A for the right punch, and R to use your rush attack. Now, is either control scheme bad? Not really. I mean, the motion controls, they are a perfectly viable playstyle, if not a little difficult to get used to at first. If you're physically inactive, you'll most likely experience some pain with how everything works. I mean, using myself as an example, I had pain in my arms for almost 4 days after playing on Saturday, and I could compare it to the pain I would feel after working out at the gym, usually because I'm not a very physically active person. And to get good with the motion controls, you also need to have full control of what you do with your own arms. You have to maintain some consistency with how you position your arms when they're not being thrown as punches, as well as how you hold the Joy-Cons. You can't be jerky with the Joy-Cons, and you can't go throwing punches out and expecting them to land. This isn't Punch-Out. And what I mean by that is, you're not standing in place as you guys are trading punches and trying to dodge in place. You guys have a full arena to use, and you gotta make use of it. With enough practice in physical arm control though, motion controls can be very rewarding, I believe. In traditional control scheme, it's much easier to learn, and it's not as demanding on your arms either, for obvious reasons. If you want a less frustrating time getting into how the game plays, traditional is most likely your best option. My own gripe with traditional controls though is, out of force of habit, I kept pressing L to guard, because I kept akinning it to like L to guard, R to do the rush attack. If the button layouts are customizable in the full game, I could let this slide because clicking in the left stick to guard feels completely unnatural to me. But I can take a guess as to why they chose this option. With motion controls, you have to tilt the Joy-Cons inward, which means you're not moving as you're guarding. So they had to show that off in the traditional control scheme by having you click in the left stick. So I can get why, but it still feels unnatural to me. Also, I'm not sure if curving punches is a possibility with traditional controls. But if it is, I can assume nothing is off limits with this control scheme then. So the character variety in ARMS is pretty damn good. I mean, With the test punch though, there was only 7 of the 10 announced characters playable, and unfortunately for what I assume is mostly everyone who played, Twintel was not among one of them, so they kinda had to default to Min Min. Now I can't really describe each character's special abilities off the top of my head, but there should be a link to a video that has a showcase of each character in the description. I tried out every character except Helix and Min Min, though with Min Min it was because there was already enough Min Mins in the lobby. I didn't want to just add more to it. I think I just wanted to see more characters being played because there was a lot of Min Min, a decent amount of Ninjara. Ribbon Girl was pretty good in there too. Helix was about the same as Ribbon Girl. Master Mummy wasn't that often, but Springman and Mechanica were even less frequent than Master Mummy, and that's kind of sad because I like Mechanica. She's like my favorite character of this whole ARMS Global Testpunch thing. You know, disregarding Twintel, but that's for a whole nother reason. I think it's just because I like freaking mechanical suits. Like someone riding in a mechanical suit, and that's just so cathartic. It's just, you're controlling a suit that does your bidding. It's amazing. But then again, that's just my personal preference. Now, the characters I seemed to latch onto were Ribbon Girl while I was learning the motion controls, and Mechanica while I was learning the traditional ones. I mean, Ribbon Girl made things easier for me on motion controls due to her multiple jumps, and being able to dash on any one of them allows for some movement mix-ups, which let me breathe a little easier while I was trying to master the motion controls. And of course, Mechanica was my second choice due to her hover jump and the fact that she's riding a freaking mechanical suit. But yeah, the hover jump really let me leave my opponents guessing when I'd be coming down or if I'd be doing an aerial or ground assault. It's like Ribbon Girl, but with not as much mix-up, but it was still kind of there. Not to mention, she's almost as tanky as Master Mummy, who's a real big tank, honestly. So while the test punch is extremely limited, it's a sure way to know if you want the game or not. And personally, this test punch convinced me to get the full game, but that's not to say it'll convince everyone. You can get into either regular battles or a game of volleyball with an explosive ball, aka V-ball. Honestly, they could have just called it volleyball, but whatever. Battles were engaging and they were full of mind games when they weren't just games of who can grab their opponent to death. And I can admit I lost way more times than I won, especially early on when I kept getting grabbed to death, but that didn't put a damper on how engrossed I got trying to learn how to play the game. The only time I remember not enjoying playing the game was when I got into a 3-player free-for-all, which can get very one-sided until one person is KO'd, or it can result in grab trains where, imagine you grab opponent A, and then opponent B grabs you, and then opponent A grabs opponent B, and then you grab opponent A again, and then it's just a freaking cycle of grabbing until someone finally dies, and then it's just one punch away until someone wins. And the V-ball game is harmless fun with trying to keep the ball from hitting the ground. And I only really remember 2 or 3 times where a bad connection made things extremely wonky. Now, even if my impression of the game won't matter to most of you, I'm hoping I helped at least one person come to a conclusion on whether or not to buy this game. But a big question for a good majority of you is probably, is this game worth buying a Switch for? I mean, to be honest, if I didn't already have the Switch, and if they didn't have anything else for the rest of the year, I mean, if they didn't have Splatoon 2 coming out, which I'm interested in, and obviously Super Mario Odyssey, hopefully if they don't delay that. If they didn't have those coming out for the rest of the year, and I only had ARMS to consider, I would most likely say, nah, I'll pass on it. And that's also saying if I didn't have the Switch to begin with. I mean, this is the kind of game where you have to experience it yourself to know if you want to invest in it. And the test punch gave me that opportunity, but that's because I had the Switch. That's a moot point when the person who's interested doesn't have one. If you have more important uses for your money, I definitely do not recommend putting yourself in financial trouble for a game you may or may not like because you didn't try it for yourself. If you know someone with a Switch, try to play the test punch this weekend with them to see for yourself. And honestly, those who play it this weekend are lucky too, because due to higher demand, Twintel will be a playable character in the test punch. You lucky booty-loving bastards. It's certainly not a game for anyone and everyone to pick up and enjoy, but as for me, I'm glad I got a chance to try it out, and I will gladly buy this now that I know what I'd be getting into. I'm just hoping Splatoon 2 doesn't take over my Switch time. Who am I kidding? It's going to anyway.